Folks, stay in your lane. I'll get into that and then the latest home prices and insights for the Peel and Durham regions for week ending April the 1st, 2026. If you want to speak directly with me about your real estate situation, selling, buying, it's really simple. You can go directly to tsre.ca. That'll take you to my calendar where you could book a time that's convenient for you, or below this video in the description, there's a link to my calendar. Click on that and again, book a time that's convenient for you. We, not long ago, we're working on a transaction where we represented the seller. And before closing, just about a week or so before closing, the agent represented the buyer, emails me an amendment and calls me and says, Santo, I just sent you an amendment. The buyer has been delayed and we need to move the closing date by just a few days. We won't be able to close on the date that we agreed to, just a few days. Now, I know my clients, the sellers, they've already moved out. They're already in their new home. For them to just say, hey, no problem. It doesn't close today, closes 3-4 days later, no problem. Like I know that. I could have and I understand the amendment. I know how to read an amendment. I've dealt with thousands of amendments in my career. No problem. This is easy for me to just talk to my clients and seller and say, hey, they need a few days. They'll close a few days later. Just sign the amendment here and we can move on. But that would be wrong of me to just do that. I did advise my clients and say, hey, listen, here's what the buyers are asking. I'm going to forward this to your lawyer. I'll copy you on it. And you need to get advice from your lawyer as to the consequences, the implications, everything involved about what does it mean to move the closing date, and then get advice from your lawyer as to how we should proceed. And if your lawyer wants me just to get this amendment signed, I'll do that. Or maybe your lawyer in conjunction with the buyer's lawyer, they'll deal with it from their offices and they don't want me involved. But whatever your lawyer decides in consultation with you is what we're going to do. That is, especially if I'm concerned, which I am, about serving my clients properly, that's the advice any realtor should be giving their clients if they're in that situation. And look, as realtors, we have lots of experience outside of our scope of being a realtor. We have lots of experience with how mortgages work. We have lots of experience with legal matters dealing with the transaction. We have lots of experience with the home inspection part of the transaction and, legal, accounting, tax, all this stuff. We're familiar and we have experience in that. But we need to know the most important skill I believe a realtor could have is knowing how and when to advise your client that they should be getting advice on that specific matter from a certain person, whether it's the mortgage person that should be advising your client, or it's the lawyer, or it's the contractor, or it's the foundation expert that is going to advise them on how that foundation should be sorted out, whatever it is. We have our scope of work that we're experts in, but there are a lot of other parts, moving parts to a transaction. And I find there are way too many realtors feel the need that they've got to solve everything and handle everything. And I've seen too many transactions go sideways because the realtors think they have all the solutions, and it's just not true. A simple thing as a buyer's visit. I know one transaction where the agreement asked for 2 buyers' visits. The buyers used up those visits and they wanted a third. What's the big deal? The buyers asked, can we go one last time? The sellers, with the agent's advice, says, yeah, what's the big deal? Go and do another buyer's visit, no problem. And during that last visit is when the transaction went sideways and caused a ton of grief. There was a firm agreement in place. It asked for 2 visits. The agents involved, especially the agent representing the seller, should have told their client, say, listen, they've asked for 2 visits. Everybody's agreed. We've given that. Now they want one more. They want to do something different than what's in this firm and binding agreement. You should ask your lawyer what their advice is on this matter. Let me know what we should do. That's how it should have gone. And then their lawyer would have advised their clients the consequences or the implications of a simple thing as one other visit. If you think this video can help somebody you know, please pass it along. If you get value from what we're talking about, subscribe. Now, let's get into the numbers. Here we go, folks. We're focused on Peel and Durham regions here. Before we get into our weekly breakdown of detached properties, I want to show you a couple of monthly charts. First of all, for Peel, this is for detached properties only. It's all of Peel. I've got monthly data for 5 years, and highlighted in black the month of March. So March 2026. And going back all the way to March 2022, highlighted in black. I got sales, I got average sold price. Let's look at sales. March 2026, 385 detached properties were sold. That is up versus March 2025. So sales went up a little bit. 354 to 385, not a big difference, but I guess it's, if you're looking at volume, it went up and not down. But it is lower if we compare to the previous years when we look at just March. One thing that is really interesting, though, is when we look at, and I'm not looking at March 2022, but from 2023 onwards, if we look at March, the next couple of months, sales increased. So that's March 2023. Same thing happened in March 2024. Same thing happened in March 2025. Sales increased. Is that going to happen this year also? That's the big question. I know lots of people tell you, oh yeah, for sure, it's inevitable. It's not. We don't know for sure which way sales are going. Would we expect there to be more sales? Yeah, looking at recent history, sure, I can get on board in saying that. We don't know by how much and what's going to happen there. So March 2026, 385 detached properties were sold. Average sold price is $1,223,000. And if we go back just to, say, August 2025, so sales or average sold price, let's say, it's been kind of flat. Look at this here. 1,204, 1,217, 1,216, 1.2, 1,223. So since August last year, average sold price has been flat. But the minute you look further back, if we compare to March a year ago, average sold price is down by more than 11%. The previous year's average sold price for March has been pretty much the same, 1,379, 1,377, 1,377. But man, last year dropped March versus March, 11.2%. When you kind of sit back overall, Yeah, average sold price for these few years here, 23, 24, and so forth. March has been pretty much the same, and then prices have come down. But currently, the trend that we're on, pretty flat, maybe a slight incline, but pretty much flat. You want to go back further? I know there's some people still talking about peak pricing. Well, we're currently 27% lower than peak pricing. If you want to go back further, compared to 2020, the current average sold price of $1,223,000 is almost 15% higher than where prices were back in 2020. That's for Peel region. Let's look at Durham region. This is same idea, month by month for 5 years, but for all of Durham region. For month ending March 26, 376 detached properties were sold. Sales, if we look at each March, has been trending down. Average sold price is $940,000, which is 7.2% lower than March a year ago. It's 10.9% lower than March 2 years ago. Average sold price basically has been trending down. You could see the line. We got peak pricing, well, 1 month off of peak pricing, March 2022, currently 25% lower. Compared to 2020, however, we're almost 32% higher in average sold price versus where the average sold price was in 2020. Think about that. 32% higher. But overall, right now, average prices seem to be trending down overall for Durham. We're going to be really focused on our weekly breakdown for Mississauga, for Brampton, and for Durham. For Durham, I'm using Pickering, Ajax, Whitby. Detached properties only we're looking at, and we're breaking things down on a weekly basis. So we're starting with Mississauga for week ending April the 1st. 29 detached properties were sold. 3 sold at $2 million or more. Doesn't look like sales is really trending up or down. 29 seems kind of flat overall. Average sold price is $1,360,000. And if I look at the beginning of the year here and I try to figure out, okay, so which way our price is going, and I look at the peaks and valleys, to me, average sold price overall kind of seems flat. It hasn't moved that much. Sure, it's been higher and lower, but overall pretty flat. 1,360,000 is 5% lower than the same week a year ago. The median price of 1,345 is also 5% lower than the same week a year ago. 29 were sold, only 5, so 17% sold at list price or more. 138 were listed, so we're seeing an increase in listings. Active listings is also trending upwards. There's 661 available detached properties in Mississauga, and 4.4% of the available properties actually sold. So that means about 96% didn't sell. That's a lot. And months of inventory climbed up. It's now sitting at 5.3 months of inventory. Depending on what you're doing, you're either going to experience a balanced market or a buyer's market when it comes to Mississauga. Here's Brampton. 44 detached properties were sold. 1 sold at $2 million or more. Which way are sales trending? I gave a big sigh because I want to say sales are trending up, and they are, but by 1 or 2 each week. It's hard to spot actually if sales are actually trending upwards. They are, but like I said, 1 or 2 each week. Overall sales are trending up, barely noticeable. Average sold price is $1,011,000, pretty flat overall if we compare to this year so far. $1,011,000 is 7% lower than the same week a year ago. the median price of 980 is 4% lower. The dotted line, the 4-week moving average, kind of reiterates the fact that average price and median price kind of flat. 44 were sold. 5 of those sold at list price or more, so 11%. 176 were listed. We're seeing more listings coming onto the market, so that number is increasing. There are 880 active listings of detached properties in Brampton, and 5% every week are selling. 95% are not selling. Months of inventory down a bit, but in line to where we were the last few weeks. 4.6 months of inventory. Excuse me. So here's Pickering, Ajax, and Whitby. That's my Durham sample. Sales trending upwards. 37 detached were sold. And if we look at just the last few weeks, look, it's trending upwards, but by 1 or 2 again each week. It's not really aggressive by any means. So 37 were sold. Average sold price seems pretty flat. It's currently sitting at $1,035,000. $1,035,000 is 10% lower than the same week a year ago. The median price of $990 is 8% lower year over year. 37 were sold. 22% of those, so 8 sold at list price or more. Listings trending upwards, not aggressively, but we're seeing more listings. Barely seeing more listings, let me say. Active listings, the amount of detached properties sitting for sale, that's trending up. But as far as percentage sold, there's 8.1% being sold every week. That percentage is one of the highest in the regions. And months of inventory, one of the lowest in the regions of 2.8 months of inventory. And for weeks and weeks, it's kind of been around 2.7, 2.8 every week. Here's a quick summary. Depending on what you're doing, you're going to have different experiences out there. If you're one of these people that'll say, like, I can buy in Mississauga, I can buy in Brampton, or I can buy in Durham region, and there's not many people or many buyers like that, you're going to experience 3 different types of markets. Balanced buyers in generally, but there's the extreme of those markets you're going to experience. But overall, it's either a buyer's market or a balanced market when you're looking at detached properties in these areas. Thanks for watching. Have an awesome day.